A millionaire finds a collapsed, pregnant homeless woman outside his Brentwood mansion. But upon seeing the mark on her arm, he was stunned. Alexander Alex Thorne had everything money could buy. At 52, he owned a chain of luxury hotels spanning the West Coast and key metropolitan hubs across the country. His mansion in the exclusive estates of Brentwood neighborhood boasted 12 bedrooms, a pool that resembled a small lake, and a garden so vast it required 3 full-time gardeners just to maintain it. Yet all that splendor, as beautiful as it was, couldn't fill the hollow emptiness Alex felt every morning waking up alone in that huge house. He had never married. He'd had relationships throughout his life, of course, but none that truly lasted. Work always came first. Building the empire he commanded today demanded sacrifices, and Alex had made them all without much thought to the consequences. Now, with the company virtually running itself and competent managers overseeing everything, he had time to spare. Too much time, in fact. And too much time for a lonely man can feel like a curse. On that Thursday in March, the sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly, though without the scorching midsummer heat. Alex decided to do something he rarely did: go for a walk. Not in the Bentley, not with the chauffeur. Just on foot. He pulled on designer athletic gear, expensive running shoes, and a baseball cap. He told Maria, the housekeeper who had worked for him for 15 years, that he would be back in an hour. "You're going out walking?" she asked, surprised. "Do you want me to have Javier accompany you?" Javier was the security guard. Alex shook his head. "No need, Maria. I'm just going around the block. I need to stretch my legs." The truth was, he needed more than that. He needed to feel alive, to feel that a world existed beyond the walls of his property. In recent months, a strange sense had overcome him. It was as if something vital were missing, but he couldn't identify what. Maybe it was just age catching up, he thought. Or perhaps it was the fact that he had no one with whom to share everything he had achieved. Alex stepped out through the back gate, which led to the yard and service area. It was an exit he almost never used. The gate creaked as he opened it, and that's when he saw her. A woman was slumped there, leaning against the wall, just outside the property line. She was motionless. Her clothes were dirty, ragged scraps, torn in several places. Her hair, tangled and colorless from the grime, covered part of her face. But what drew Alex's attention most was her abdomen. She was pregnant, very pregnant. His first instinct was to retreat, to call someone, maybe call the police. It wasn't uncommon for homeless people to pass through the area, although the neighborhood's private security usually deterred them before they got too close to the houses. But something stopped Alex from turning his back. He approached slowly. The woman was breathing, but faintly, irregularly. Her skin was too pale, her lips cracked. How long had she been there? Why right there at his gate? "Ma'am?" he called, gently touching her shoulder. "Are you okay?" There was no response. Alex felt his heart race. He had to do something. He couldn't just leave her there. He pulled out his cell phone to call an ambulance. But as he dialed, his gaze fell upon the woman's right arm. The sleeve of her shirt was torn, and there, on the inside of her forearm, was a mark. A perfectly shaped crescent moon birthmark, as if drawn intentionally. Alex dropped the phone. Without thinking, he pulled up his own jacket sleeve and looked at his own arm. There, in the exact same spot, was the identical mark. He'd had that mark since birth, and all his life people asked about it. "It looks like a little moon," they'd say. He always thought it was unique to him, different. But now he was seeing the same mark on the arm of an unconscious stranger on the sidewalk. Alex's hands trembled. This couldn't be a coincidence. Couldn't. He picked up his phone again, and this time he didn't call the ambulance. He called Javier. "Javier, get back here to the service entrance. Fast. And bring the car." 5 minutes later, Alex and the security guard were carefully placing the woman in the back seat of the SUV. She still hadn't woken up, but was moaning softly. Alex got into the car next to her, cradling her head so it wouldn't hit anything during the drive. Maria came running out, startled. "Mr. Thorne, what happened? Who is this woman?" "I don't know, Maria, but I need to find out. I'm taking her to the hospital. On the way, Alex couldn't stop looking at the mark on the woman's arm. Old memories, buried for decades, began to surface in his mind like flashes. He was very small, maybe 3 or 4 years old. He remembered another child, a girl. They played together. She laughed a lot. She had the same curly hair as he did. But then suddenly she vanished. He cried, looked for her around the house, and his parents, nervous, said she had gone away, that he needed to forget. Alex never understood what had happened. Over time, those memories became confused, hazy. He even started to think he had invented it all, that maybe they were just childhood dreams. But now, looking at this woman, at that mark identical to his own, something inside Alex's chest twisted. Faster, Javier. I'm pushing the limit, sir. At St. Jude Medical Center, the best hospital in the city, Alex carried the woman in his arms to the emergency entrance. Nurses rushed over with a gurney. A young doctor, with pulled-back hair and a serious gaze, began assessing the situation. She's dehydrated, malnourished. How far along is the pregnancy? I don't know, Alex replied. I found her collapsed on the street. The doctor looked at him, then at the woman, and seemed to grasp the situation. It was common in large hospitals to receive critically ill individuals experiencing homelessness. We'll run all necessary tests. The baby needs to be assessed too. Are you related to her? Alex hesitated. He didn't know what to say. Then he spoke the first thing that came to mind. It's possible. That's why I need you to run a DNA test. Immediately, the doctor frowned. A DNA test? Yes, I will cover all costs of her treatment, whatever is necessary. But I need that test. The doctor nodded slowly, suspicious, but didn't question him. Money spoke loudly everywhere. In the following hours, while the woman received saline, medication, and a host of tests, Alex waited in the hospital lobby. He couldn't leave. Something held him there. Maria called 3 times, worried, but he had no answers to give her or himself. Around 7 in the evening, the doctor returned. She carried a clipboard full of papers and a slightly lighter expression. She's stable. The babies too, actually. They're twins. Alex's eyes widened. Twins? Yes, she's approximately 37 weeks along. It's a miracle that both she and the babies survived in these conditions. The doctor paused. She woke up a little while ago. She's weak, confused, but conscious. Do you want to speak with her? Alex jumped up. He needed to see her face. He needed answers. The doctor led him to a private room. There, in the bed, was the woman. She had been bathed, and now it was possible to see her features clearly. She looked about his age. Her face was marked by suffering, by a hard life. But even so, there was something familiar there. Her eyes were brown just like his. The shape of her nose, the way her mouth curved, everything seemed like a distorted reflection of Alex himself. Hi, she said, her voice rough. They told me you brought me here. Alex approached slowly, feeling his heart pound. Yes, I found you collapsed near my house. He paused, trying to find the right words. What is your name? Elena. She looked away, embarrassed. I'm sorry for being there. I didn't want to bother anyone. I just needed to rest for a moment. Why were you right there? Elena was silent for a long moment. Then, with tears sliding down her face, she said, I can't explain it. I had a dream so real it felt like a memory. And in that dream I saw that house, that gate, and a feeling that I needed to be there, that someone there might help me. She sobbed. I know it sounds crazy. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He pulled up his own sleeve, revealing the moon mark on his arm. Then he pointed to hers. Elena looked, confused at first, but then her eyes widened. You have one too? She whispered. Me too. In the exact same spot. Exactly the same. The silence that followed was charged with a strange electricity, as if the universe had paused for a second. Elena raised her trembling hand to her own mark, touching it as if for the first time. What does this mean? She asked, her voice barely audible. I don't know yet, but I requested a DNA test. We're going to find out. Over the next 3 days, while they waited for the test results, Alex visited Elena every day at the hospital. He paid for a private room with every comfort and ensured she received the best nutrition possible. Elena, in turn, shared a little of her story. She remembered almost nothing of her childhood. She had vague memories of an orphanage, of being shuffled from family to family, of never finding a place where she truly belonged. As a teenager, she ran away and ended up on the streets. She survived as best she could for years. She got pregnant from a brief relationship with a man named Jake who vanished as soon as he heard the news. I wanted so badly for my children to have a different life than mine, Elena said, her hand on her belly. But I didn't know how. I have nothing. I have no one. Alex listened with a tight feeling in his chest. Every word Elena spoke echoed within him, stirring those old memories he had spent his life trying to forget. On the 3rd day, the doctor brought the DNA result. She entered the room with an unreadable expression and handed the envelope to Alex. He opened it with trembling hands. The paper contained technical terms, graphs, numbers, but at the end, one simple, direct sentence. Probability of relationship, 99.9%. Relation, siblings. Alex had to sit down. The room spun for a second. Elena, from the bed, asked fearfully, "What does it say?" Alex looked up at her, and tears streamed down his face without him realizing it. "We're siblings, Elena. You are my sister." Elena covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes wide with shock. Then she too began to weep. They weren't tears of sadness, but of something much deeper. It was as if a hole that had existed within her forever had suddenly been filled. But how?" she managed through sobs. "We're twins," Alex said, reading the rest of the report. "They separated us when we were children. The records the lab access show we were born together, but placed in different adoptions early in life." "Why?" Elena asked, her voice broken. "Why would anyone do that?" Alex thought of his childhood, of the parents who raised him. They were good people, but they had their problems. They drank, they argued, they lived on the financial edge. He remembered whispered conversations, something about not being able to raise two, about someone having to go. At the time, he was too small to understand. Now, it all made sense. They couldn't afford to raise twins, so they decided to keep one and give up the other. "I don't know if we'll get all the answers," Alex said, wiping his own tears. "But I know that from now on, you are no longer alone. You have family. You have a brother." Elena reached out her hand, and Alex grasped it. They remained like that, in silence, just feeling the weight and the beauty of that moment. 52 years. 52 years separated, each suffering in their own way, each carrying the mark of the moon as a silent promise that one day they would reunite. That night, Alex made a decision. He wouldn't just help Elena with money or medical treatment. He would take her home. She would live with him. They would rebuild the lost time. And those babies she carried would be born into a real home, with love, security, and a family that was finally complete. The next morning, when Alex told Elena about the plan, she looked at him with a mix of fear and hope. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm a burden. I don't want to be a drain on your life." "You are not a burden, Elena. You are my sister." Alex smiled, and it was a genuine smile, something he hadn't felt in a long time. "I have a huge empty house. Now it's going to have life. It's going to have you. It's going to have your children. It's going to be a real home." Elena couldn't stop crying. For the first time in decades, she said the words she never thought she'd say again. "Thank you, Alex." Alex left the hospital that day with a lighter heart than he had carried in years. He had a mission now, purpose. He was no longer just a rich, lonely man. He was a brother, an uncle who was about to meet his nephews. And for the first time in his life, Alex Thorne felt the emptiness inside him starting to close. And what would you have done in Alex's place? Would you help a stranger? Or would you just call an ambulance and move on? Sometimes life puts us before choices that can change everything. Leave a comment below with what you would do, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. The story of Alex and Elena is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Elena's arrival at the mansion was a moment that Maria and the other staff would never forget. They were accustomed to the house's silent routine, with Mr. Thorne living alone, occasionally receiving business visitors, but never anything like this. When Alex entered through the main door accompanied by a heavily pregnant woman, wearing new clothes but still with the frightened look of someone who can't believe what they are living, everyone was speechless. "Everyone," Alex said, gathering the 5 staff members in the main living room. "I want to introduce Elena. She is my sister. We've just been reunited after 50 years apart. Starting today, she will be living here with us." Maria was the first to react. As the longest-serving staff member, she had a freedom the others didn't. She hugged Elena carefully, because of her belly, and said with teary eyes, "Welcome home, dear. Thank God Mr. Thorne finally has family." The first few days were about adjustment. Elena didn't know how to act in that enormous house. Everything was too big, too beautiful, too clean. She had spent so much time sleeping on cold streets, in crowded shelters, in dark corners, that being in a spacious room with a soft bed, private bathroom, and clean clothes felt like a dream she would wake up from at any moment. At night, she woke up startled, sweating coldly, thinking she was still on the street. Alex, who also slept little, heard when she got up and wandered through the house. One early morning, he found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table, her hands trembling. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I'm still not used to it," Elena replied, her voice low. "I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out none of this is real." Alex held her hand. "It is real, Elena, and it's going to stay real. You are safe here." Gradually, the days established a routine. Every morning, Maria prepared a hearty breakfast for Elena, with fruit, pastries, eggs, and fresh juice. Alex insisted on having coffee with her, something he had never done before. They talked about everything and nothing, about the babies to come, about fragmented childhood memories, about life. Elena began prenatal care with a private obstetrician, Dr. Evans, who was impressed with her health status considering everything she had been through. "It's a miracle," the doctor said during one consultation, while performing the ultrasound and the babies appeared on the screen. "They are healthy, but you need a lot of rest, Elena. No stress." Seeing his nephews on the ultrasound was a moment that deeply moved Alex. There, in those 2 small shapes on the screen, was the future of the family he never had. He promised himself he would do everything in his power to ensure those children had the best life possible. "They're 2 boys," the doctor announced, smiling. Elena cried with joy. Alex did too. As the weeks passed, the bond between the siblings deepened. Alex began to discover who Elena truly was behind all the suffering. She was gentle but strong. She had a sarcastic sense of humor when she felt comfortable. She loved to read, and Alex transformed one of the rooms into a small library just for her. Every afternoon, Elena sat there and devoured books. It was as if she was compensating for all the years she hadn't had access to any of it. One evening, while having dinner, Elena told him more about the baby's father. "His name was Jake," she said, looking at her plate. "I met him at a shelter. He was also living on the streets. We were together for a few months. I thought we could build something, you know? But when I told him I was pregnant, he left. He just vanished." Alex felt anger toward this unknown Jake, but said nothing. It wasn't the time to judge. "You never heard from him again?" he asked. "No, and honestly, I don't want to. He made his choice. Now I choose to take care of my children the best way I can." "The best way we can," Alex corrected, smiling. "You are not alone in this." Elena's eyes filled with tears again. She was always emotional, but Alex understood. The pregnancy, the abrupt life changes, the fear mixed with hope. It was a lot to process. A month later, Alex organized a surprise baby shower for Elena. He hired a decorator, filled the mansion garden with blue balloons, prepared a huge table with sweets and savories, and invited some of the staff and closest neighbors. When Elena came downstairs and saw it all, she couldn't control her emotion. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she asked, hugging her brother tightly. Because you deserve it, Alex simply replied. You always deserved it. It was during the baby shower that Elena met Lorraine Davies, a neighbor of Alex's who worked as a social worker. Lorraine was a woman in her mid-40s, with red hair and a talkative, friendly manner. She came over to speak with Elena, curious about the whole story. So you're twins who were separated in childhood? Lorraine asked, her eyes sparkling. Wow, what an incredible story. It is, Elena replied, still uncomfortable with so much attention. It still feels unreal. And you were living on the street before? Lorraine lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret. Elena hesitated. T nodded. I was. Lorraine then said something that kept echoing in Elena's head. You're very lucky. Many people in your situation don't get a happy ending. But you need to seize this chance. Okay? Opportunities like this don't come around twice. Elena smiled, but something in those words bothered her. Lucky. Was that the right word? She had suffered for 50 years. She had been separated from her family, had grown up without love, without a home, had endured hunger, cold, and fear. Now, finally, she was rebuilding her life with the brother she should never have lost. Was that luck? Or was it delayed justice? But Elena pushed those thoughts away. It wasn't the time to philosophize. It was time to be happy. The weeks continued to pass, and Elena's belly grew bigger and bigger. She and Alex had long conversations about what it would be like when the babies were born. Alex hired a private postpartum specialist to help in the first months and began renovating 2 adjoining rooms to turn them into a dream nursery. You don't have to spend so much, Elena would say, though without much energy to protest. The truth was, she loved seeing her brother's excitement. I want them to have everything, Alex always replied. Everything we didn't have. One afternoon, while Maria was folding baby clothes that had arrived, she commented to Elena, Mr. Thorne has changed since you arrived. He smiles more. He seems lighter. I think he was waiting for you without even knowing it. Elena felt her heart warm. She felt it too. For the first time in her life, she had a purpose that went beyond just surviving. She had someone who truly cared. But not everything was perfect. On some nights, Alex was quiet, lost in thought. Elena asked what was wrong, and he said everything was fine, but she could tell something was bothering him. Until one night, he finally told her. I hired a private investigator, Alex said, looking out the office window. I want to find out exactly what happened, why they separated us, who made that decision, if our parents are still alive. Elena felt a chill in her stomach. Are you sure you want to know? I need to know, Alex replied, turning to her. I need to understand. Not to blame anyone, but to close this chapter. Don't you want to know too? Elena thought for a long moment. Part of her wanted to know, but another, larger and more frightened part, preferred to leave the past where it was. I don't know, she answered honestly. I'm afraid of what we'll find. Me too, Alex admitted. But I think it's worse not knowing. 2 weeks later, the investigator, a serious man named Mr. Davis, presented his report. Alex and Elena sat together in the office to listen. I found records, Mr. Davis began, opening a folder full of old papers. You were born in 1972, in a small town in rural North Carolina. Your biological parents were Anthony and Mary Smith. They lived in extreme poverty. According to the documents, shortly after your birth, there was judicial involvement. The mother suffered from severe mental health issues, and the father had alcohol problems. The state determined they were unfit to raise 2 babies. Elena squeezed Alex's hand tightly. And what happened? She managed to ask. You were placed with different adoption families. Alex was adopted by the Thorne family. Elena, you entered the foster care system because your initial adoption family gave you up when you were 2 years old. It hit her like a punch to the gut. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. She was returned, like a defective object. Alex pulled her into a tight embrace. And the biological parents? He asked. The father died in 1985. The mother, Mr. Davis paused. She's alive. She lives in an assisted living facility upstate. She's 83 and has advanced dementia. The silence that followed was heavy. Alex and Elena didn't know what to do with that information. Part of them wanted to meet the mother, but knowing her condition, what would it change? "Thank you, Mr. Davis," Alex finally said. "I'll consider how to proceed." That night, Alex and Elena stayed up late talking about everything they had discovered. It was painful but also liberating. Now they knew the truth. They weren't abandoned out of cruelty. They were victims of circumstances greater than themselves. And now they had the chance to do things differently with the babies to come. But not everything was resolved. A few days later, Lorraine Davies showed up at the mansion again. She said she wanted to see how Elena was doing, but there was something in her manner that felt strange to Alex. She asked indiscreet questions about Elena's financial situation, about the babies, about the legal status of their custody. "Have you already regularized the baby's documentation?" Lorraine asked while having tea in the living room. "What do you mean?" Elena responded, confused. "Well, since you lived on the street for a while, I imagine you don't have all your paperwork in order. Updated birth certificate, proof of stable address. These things are important for when the babies are born." Elena turned pale. She hadn't thought about that. Alex, sensing his sister's discomfort, interjected, "All of that will be handled by our attorneys. Don't worry." Lorraine smiled, but there was something fake about it. "Of course, just wanted to help. Sometimes the system can be complicated." After Lorraine left, Elena was restless. Why was she asking all that? She questioned. "I don't know," Alex replied, but he had also sensed something wrong. "I'll ask Maria not to let her in without my clearance next time." The following days were tense. Elena started having nightmares where someone took her babies away. She woke up sweating, her heart racing, and Alex always went to her room to calm her down. But something had changed in the air. The peace they had built seemed threatened by invisible forces. And then, a week later, it happened. Alex received a call from his lawyer. A social worker had filed a motion requesting a review of Elena's parental suitability for her children's custody. They alleged she had a history of life on the streets, lacked proven stability, and that the babies might be at risk. Alex went white with rage. Who filed this motion? A social worker named Lorraine Davies. Alex hung up the phone, his blood boiling. That woman had come into their home, had pretended to be a friend, and now she was trying to take Elena's babies. But why? He didn't tell Elena immediately. He knew the news could be dangerous for her advanced pregnancy. He needed to resolve it alone. He hired the best family law attorneys in the city and began an investigation into Lorraine. What he discovered was disturbing. Lorraine had a history of irregularities in other cases. She and her husband had tried to adopt several times but were always rejected for psychological reasons. There were rumors that she manipulated cases to separate babies from vulnerable mothers, then tried to facilitate adoption for herself or others in exchange for payment. Alex was about to confront Lorraine legally when Elena discovered the lawsuit. Maria, inadvertently, let slip a conversation she had overheard. Elena was devastated. "They're going to take my children from me?" she screamed, desperate, clutching her belly. "I won't let them. I won't let them." "Elena, calm down." Alex tried to soothe her. "They won't take anything. I will fix this." "How?" she wept. "Look at me, Alex. Look who I am. I lived on the street. I have nothing in my name. No judge will let me keep my children. You have me." Alex yelled back, holding her shoulders. "You are not alone, and I will fight for you. Elena, no one will touch those babies." But the seed of doubt had been sown. That night, Elena did something that would change everything. She ran away. She left a note saying she couldn't stay, that she was afraid her presence would harm the babies, that Alex would be a better uncle than she would be a mother, that she would only bring trouble. When Alex woke up the next morning and found the note, he felt the floor drop out from under him. He called the police, hired private security, mobilized every contact he had. But Elena had vanished, taking only a small backpack of clothes. 2 days passed. Alex didn't eat, didn't sleep, he only searched. The lawyers said the flight worsened her situation in the custody case. Lorraine used it as proof that Elena was unstable. It was Maria who found the second lead. A friend of hers who worked at a municipal shelter sent a photo. It was Elena, hidden in a corner, 9 months pregnant, about to give birth. Alex raced out. When he arrived at the shelter, his heart nearly stopped. Elena was in labor, clutching her belly, moaning in pain, but refusing to go to the hospital. "They'll take my children," she screamed. "If I go to the hospital, they'll take them." Alex knelt in front of her, holding his sister's face between his hands. "Look at me, Elena. Look at me." He spoke firmly, but with love. "I will never, do you hear me? Never let anyone take these babies from you. But you need to go to the hospital. Now, your children need to be born safely. Do you promise?" Elena sobbed, gripping his arms tightly. "Promise they won't take them?" "I promise with my life." Elena finally conceded. Alex carried her to the car and drove at maximum speed to St. Jude. The babies were born 3 hours later. 2 healthy boys, crying loudly, full of life. Elena held them for the first time and wept so hard the doctors worried. But they weren't tears of sadness. It was everything combined. Fear, joy, pain, hope, love. Alex held his nephews, Ethan and Owen, one at a time, and felt that nothing else mattered except protecting this family. But the battle was far from over. The next day, Lorraine showed up at the hospital with an officer and a temporary court order limiting Elena's contact with the babies until the situation could be evaluated. That's when Alex made a choice. He wasn't going to play nice anymore. He had power, he had money, he had contacts, and he was going to use all of it to destroy anyone who dared to take his family away. Elena, from her hospital bed, saw her brother leave with a fierce determination in his eyes that she had never seen before, and she felt for the first time that maybe, just maybe, they could win this battle. But the cost of this war was still to come. What do you think? Will Alex succeed in protecting Elena and the babies? Or do you think the system will separate this family again? The story is at its most tense point. Leave the word family in the comments if you believe love always wins. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video. The resolution is coming, and you won't want to miss it. In the 3 days following the twins' birth, Alex's life transformed into a multi-front war. He slept at most 2 hours a night. The rest of the time was dedicated to meetings with lawyers, investigators, and even a journalist he hired to expose Lorraine and her scheme. Elena remained at the hospital with the babies, now named Ethan and Owen. Every time she looked at her sons, she felt a love so profound it hurt physically. But she also felt fear. Fear that at any moment, someone would walk through the door and take her boys away. Alex arrived early at the hospital every day, bringing food prepared by Maria, news of the legal battles, and above all, hope. "I found out more about Lorraine," Alex explained during one visit, speaking quietly so as not to wake the babies sleeping in the bassinet beside the bed. "She has connections to an irregular adoption scheme. She's done this to at least 4 other vulnerable mothers in the last 2 years." Elena's eyes widened. "And why isn't she in jail?" "Because she's smart. She uses legal loopholes. She works with corrupt lawyers who know exactly how to manipulate the system." Alex clenched his fists. "But this time, she messed with the wrong family." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to expose her. Publicly. I have an investigative journalist gathering evidence. We're going to the district attorney's office, legal aid, the media. She won't have anywhere to hide when this all comes out." Elena felt a mixture of fear and hope. What if that makes everything worse? What if they use that against me, saying you're buying witnesses or something? "They won't, because I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm just bringing the truth to light." Alex held his sister's hand. "Trust me, Elena." And she trusted him. For the first time in her life, she had someone she could truly trust. But things got worse before they got better. A week later, there was a preliminary hearing at the courthouse. Alex hired Miss Sterling, a family lawyer known for defending difficult causes and for never giving up on her clients. Miss Sterling was a woman in her early 50s, graying hair, reading glasses hanging from her neck, and a look that intimidated even prosecutors. At the hearing, Lorraine was there, accompanied by her attorney, a man in an expensive suit and an arrogant smile. They presented arguments that Elena lacked the psychological or financial means to raise the twins. They spoke about her history of living on the streets, her flight from the hospital, and her erratic behavior. The judge, Judge Thompson, a serious woman in her 60s, listened carefully. But when it was the defense's turn, Miss Sterling rose with a folder full of documents. "Your Honor," she began in a firm voice, "I ask permission to present evidence that this action is not founded on the protection of the children, but rather on the obscure interests of the social worker, Lorraine Davies." Lorraine's lawyer immediately protested, but the judge allowed Miss Sterling to continue. What followed was a complete exposé of Lorraine's history, previous cases that had been filed away for lack of evidence, but which, viewed together, formed a clear pattern. Testimonies from other mothers who had been intimidated by her. Recorded conversations where Lorraine discussed fees to facilitate adoptions. Lorraine went pale. She tried to deny it, but Miss Sterling had everything documented. She also presented psychological evaluations of Elena conducted by renowned professionals, all certifying that she was in full condition to care for her children. She presented proof that Elena now had a stable address, family support, and prenatal and postpartum medical care. The judge called for a recess. When she returned, her expression was grave. "I will deny the motion for temporary custody restriction. Ms. Elena Thorne has every right to remain with her children." She looked directly at Lorraine. "And I will open an administrative investigation into the practices of social worker Lorraine Davies. She is suspended from her duties pending the conclusion of the process." Alex and Elena, who watched everything via video from the hospital, couldn't hold back their tears. They had won the first battle, but it wasn't the end. Lorraine, leaving the courtroom, looked at Alex with pure hatred. "You don't know who you're messing with," she snarled. "And you don't know who you messed with," Alex responded without hesitation. In the following days, life began to take a new turn. Elena was discharged from the hospital and returned to the mansion with Ethan and Owen. Seeing the babies in that enormous house, in the cribs Alex had prepared with such care, was emotional for everyone. Maria and the other staff helped with care, but it was Elena who was always present. She changed diapers, gave bottles, and rocked the boys when they cried. Alex was also constantly nearby. He had postponed business trips, delegated important meetings, all to be present during those first few months. One evening, after the babies were finally asleep, Alex and Elena sat on the patio, each with a cup of tea. The sky was starry, the air was cool, the city quiet below. "You know," Elena said, looking up at the stars, "I never thought I'd be happy. Never. I thought I'd die on the streets, alone, forgotten. But now..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Alex understood. "I felt empty too," he confessed. "I had everything, but it all seemed to mean nothing. Now I know why. I was waiting for you, for them." He pointed towards the window of the room where the babies slept. "For this family." Elena leaned her head on her brother's shoulder, and they stayed there in silence, just feeling the peace of the moment. But life always holds surprises. A few weeks later, when everything finally seemed to be calming down, Alex received a call from Mr. Davis, the private investigator. "Mr. Thorne, I need to speak with you in person. It's urgent." They met in Alex's office the next morning. Mr. Davis brought unexpected news. "I continued investigating Lorraine, as you requested, and I discovered something I think explains a lot." He opened a dossier. Lorraine wasn't acting alone. She has a partner, an attorney named Richard Guzman. He specializes in adoption processes, but in reality, he operates in a black market for babies. They select vulnerable mothers, create false processes, and then facilitate illegal adoptions for exorbitant fees. Alex felt nauseous. And where does my sister fit into this? Lorraine heard about Elena's story through neighborhood gossip. A pregnant woman, recently off the streets, living with a newly found rich brother. She thought it would be easy. She'd separate Elena from the babies by alleging instability, gain temporary custody, and then offer the children to a couple willing to pay a fortune for healthy twins. Alex had to sit down. The sheer malice of it all was hard to process. Do you have proof? I do, and I've already forwarded everything to federal authorities. They will arrest Lorraine and Guzman within the next few hours. And that is exactly what happened. Late that afternoon, the news showed the arrest of Lorraine Davies and Richard Guzman, accused of conspiracy, trafficking of minors, and corruption. The report exposed the entire scheme, with interviews of other mothers who had been victims but never had the courage or resources to report it. Elena watched the news with Alex beside her. When she saw Lorraine being put into the police car, she felt a mixture of anger, relief, and sadness for all the other families that woman had destroyed. It's over, Alex said, holding his sister's hand. She won't hurt anyone else. Thanks to you, Elena replied, tears in her eyes. If it weren't for you, I would have lost my sons. No, Alex corrected. If it weren't for your strength. You didn't give up, Elena. Even when everything seemed lost, you fought. Elena hugged her brother tightly. Right there in that embrace was the healing of 50 years of pain. In the following weeks, life finally found a calm rhythm. Ethan and Owen grew up healthy. Elena enrolled in a GED program to finish the education she never completed. Alex, inspired by the transformation that had occurred in his life, decided to use part of his fortune to establish an institute that helped people experiencing homelessness reintegrate into society. One morning, 6 months after the twins were born, Alex approached Elena with a proposal. I found our mother. Elena froze. How? Remember Mr. Davis said she was in an assisted living facility? I went to visit her. Alex paused. Her dementia is severe. She didn't recognize me, but I talked to the caregivers, saw old photos of her. Elena, she looks so much like you. Elena didn't know what to feel. Part of her was angry at the woman who had brought them into the world but couldn't care for them. Another part felt pity, and another, smaller but present, felt curiosity. Do you think I should go see her? Only if you want to, Alex replied. It won't change anything. She won't even know who you are. But maybe it will give you closure. Elena thought for several days. Finally, she decided to go. Alex accompanied her. They left the babies with Maria and made the trip upstate. The facility was clean, but sad like all places of that kind. Their mother, Mary, was sitting in a wheelchair in the garden, staring into space. She was a small, very thin elderly woman, with white hair and trembling hands. When Elena approached, Mary didn't react. There was no recognition in the empty eyes. Elena knelt in front of her mother and held her hands. Hi, Mom. I'm Elena, your daughter. Nothing. No response. But Elena kept talking. She told her about the babies, about how tough life had been, but also about how she had found her brother, about how happy she was now. She didn't expect answers. She just needed to say it. When they left, Elena cried in the car. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. She had made peace with the past. She had seen where she came from and could, finally, move forward without that burden on her shoulders. Months passed. Ethan and Owen celebrated their first birthday with a small but loving party. Alex carried them in his arms, taught them words, bought too many toys. Elena laughed at her brother's enthusiasm. You're going to spoil them too much, she would say. So what? He'd respond with a smile. They deserve the whole world. One afternoon, almost 2 years after everything began, Alex and Elena were in the garden watching the babies, now not so babies, play. Ethan was trying to chase a butterfly. Owen laughed sitting on the grass. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. You know, Elena said suddenly, I think a lot about how it all happened. If I hadn't collapsed on that sidewalk, exactly in that spot, on that day, if you hadn't gone out for a walk through that gate, if you hadn't seen my mark. Sometimes I think it wasn't a coincidence, Alex replied. I think somehow we were destined to meet. The family that was separated when we were children was fighting to reunite. Elena smiled. Do you believe in destiny? I do now. They stayed there, watching the boys play, feeling the soft afternoon breeze. The mansion that was once empty and cold now overflowed with life. Children's laughter echoed through the halls. Toys were scattered everywhere. Lullabies played on Elena's phone every night. The house finally had a soul. Alex looked at his sister and felt deep gratitude. Gratitude for the day he decided to go for a walk. Gratitude for stopping and looking at that fallen woman. Gratitude for noticing the mark. Gratitude for every choice that led him here. Thank you, he said suddenly. Elena looked at him, confused. Thank you for what? For giving me a family. For giving me a purpose. For showing me that life has meaning when you love someone. Elena felt the tears come, but this time she didn't try to hide them. Happy tears didn't need to be hidden. I should be thanking you, brother. You saved me. You saved my sons. You gave me a life I didn't even know was possible. We saved each other, Alex corrected. I was lost too. I just didn't realize it. Ethan came running and jumped into his uncle's lap. Uncle Axe, he shouted, still unable to pronounce Alex correctly. Play. Owen followed closely behind, holding a toy truck. Me too. Alex picked up both of them, one in each arm, and Elena took a picture. Looking at that image, she knew she would keep it forever. Not just on her phone, but in her memory, in her heart. That night, after the boys were asleep, Alex sat in his office to do some work. But first, he opened a drawer and took out an old photo he had found among the belongings of the parents who raised him. It was a picture of him and Elena as babies before the separation. The two were in a crib together, holding each other. He looked at the photo, then looked at the house around him, full of life and love, and smiled. 50 years. 50 years for two siblings separated by fate to reunite. 50 years of pain, solitude, struggle, and loss. But in the end, it was worth it. Because now they had what should have always been theirs. A family. Alex put the photo away again and walked to Elena's room. The door was ajar. She was sitting in the rocking chair between the two bassinets, softly humming a lullaby. The boys were sleeping soundly. The scene was so perfect that he didn't want to interrupt. He just stood there in the doorway watching. And in that moment, Alex understood what true happiness was. It wasn't the money, it wasn't the mansions or the hotels, it wasn't the power or the success. It was this, that simple scene of a mother caring for her children, of a family reunited, of a love that overcame all barriers. He returned to his room thinking about the future. Ethan and Owen would grow up with all the love and opportunities that Elena and he never had. They would never know what it was like to go hungry, cold, or afraid. They would never know what it was like not to have a home. And most importantly, they would never know what it was like not to have a family that loved them unconditionally. And when they got older, Alex and Elena would tell the story. The story of how two twin siblings were separated as children, but how the universe conspired to bring them together again. They would tell them about the moon mark that connected them, about the strength of never giving up, about the importance of helping those in need, and about how love always finds a way. That night, Alex slept better than he had in years. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't have the feeling of emptiness upon waking. Because now life had meaning. It had purpose. It had family. The next day, when the sun rose illuminating the mansion garden, a new routine began. Breakfast all together. Elena telling stories to the boys. Alex making faces to make them laugh. Maria preparing everyone's favorite food. The house breathed life. And outside, on the sidewalk where it all began, the mark on the ground where Elena had collapsed was already washed away by the rain and time. But the mark that meeting left on their lives would never be erased. Because some things are eternal, and family love is one of them. And so ends the story of Alex and Elena. Two lives that crossed paths at the right moment, exactly as it should have been. If this story touched your heart, leave the word reunion in the comments below and tell us. Do you believe certain people enter our lives for a reason? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone you love. Because in the end, family is everything. And sometimes the family we need appears when we least expect it. Thank you for watching until the end, and until the next story.